Hi, this is Jeff Davis with the Davis Group coming to you with another edition of Agent Training. Today we're on Agent Training number 21, working with escrow and title companies. Now, real estate is a very multifaceted business and it involves a lot of people in order to get a deal to work. You've got a seller who wants to sell a house, a buyer who wants to buy it. Many times there's a lender providing the financing. There are attorneys protecting the interests of both parties. There are inspection companies that go out and make sure the property is up to where it needs to be, and they tell the buyer of any and the seller of any potential problems with the property. And then there are, in addition to the attorneys, there are what are called escrow and title companies. Now, in California, the majority of the deals that we do, virtually I'd say all of them, are going to be through an escrow company or title company. And what that means is that there will be a third party, an uninterested third party, who will receive documents from the seller, documents from the buyer. They'll receive the funds from the buyer as far as any earnest money. They'll receive the funds from the lender, and they will distribute these to the parties once the deal closes. They will also be getting the title to make sure that the title can pass successfully from the seller to the buyer. They'll be working with any attorneys that are involved, and they will have what's called a closing. And the closing is basically where the seller and the buyer come together and the deal is done. Now, in days gone by, everybody had to be at the closing because that's typically where everybody got paid. Now, a lot of times, you don't, not everyone has to necessarily be there. You're able to send instructions or have someone else operate as a power of attorney. But saying all of that to say that's the process. So we have to work with escrow companies. We have to work with these places that are going to be responsible for helping us to pull our deal together. So, whenever you have a contract, you're going to get earnest money, but that earnest money isn't going to come to the office. California has such strict laws on escrow accounts that it just makes more sense for real estate companies to let the escrow company handle these accounts because they have the escrow accounts already set up. So it's just very cumbersome if you're a realtor to go through it because you're going to end up, even after you receive the money, you got to send it to the escrow anyway for closing. This way it's already there. So the life here of a typical California escrow is this. Walk you through the process. Properties listed for sale is sold, and the broker gives the escrow agent copies of the contracts along with the seller and buyer contact information. The escrow agent then prepares instructions and all pertinent documents, obtains the necessary signatures, orders a preliminary title report, and then forwards these documents, the required documents, to everybody involved. Typically, the lenders and the attorneys want to see the title report. Um, so, if there's a new loan, then the lender will tell the escrow company what is required in order for the loan to fund. So sometimes they'll have special instructions about what needs to be done. They'll give those instructions to the escrow company. Um, there will also be a request for loan payoffs so that if the seller has a loan on the property, we need to know the exact dollar amount and how long that amount is good for. Typically, it'll work through to the end of the month is what they will send to you. So, but somebody's got to order that, and that's typically something the escrow company does. They will also, if they're looking at the title, there may be some judgments or liens against the property. And these things can prevent it from closing. So they will request info on it, and if there is a judgment or a lien, they're going to want to see proof that it's been satisfied. They're also going to receive the property tax info from the preliminary title report, and they're going to get the loan approval for the loan. So they'll be working with the lender, but they'll make sure that their loan is approved. They're going to request any specific documents from the lender. At the closing, in order for the title to convey, a couple of things must happen. the lender is going to send money to the escrow company to pay for the loan, to fund the loan to the buyer. And the loan, then after all of the expenses come out, the balance goes to the seller. Now, when this happens, the lender is also going to be looking to make sure that they have proper title to the property. Well, not necessarily title. They want to make sure they're on the title to the property, and they want to be in what's called the first position, meaning that if they have to foreclose on this property in the future, they're going to be the first ones to get paid. They also want to make sure that if there are any encumbrances, leases, liens, etc., excuse me, not leases, but liens, judgments, etc., on the property, they want to make sure that all that stuff is taken care of because they don't want what's called a cloud on the title. They don't want anything getting in the way of them being able to enforce their loan that they have on this property. Now, they're also going to require that the buyer signs a promissory note, which is basically a promise to pay. And then the buyer, in most cases, is going to sign a mortgage deed. And this basically means that the buyer agrees to pay and allows the mortgage to be the collateral that is then put on the property. So at the end of the closing, the buyer not only gets the keys to the house, they have the title of the house in their name, and they have a mortgage on that house put on the title. And then the buyer walks away. The seller walks away clean. They owe no more. They have no more obligations to this house, and they've got whatever monies were due them when they walk away. Now, the escrow company also reviews and makes sure that all conditions are met and that all documents are properly signed by whoever's supposed to sign them. And there is a lot of signatures that go on in the real estate closing, so it can be quite cumbersome to make sure that everything is right. Now, they may look for things like termite inspections, any contingencies that needed to be waived in writing. They're going to look for homeowners insurance. That'll be another condition that the mortgage lender is going to want. The house has to be insured prior to closing because they don't want to have the mortgage on this house without insurance. And so typically the buyer will come to closing with evidence that they've paid for the first year's homeowners insurance. They're going to be looking at things like if there are grant deeds, deeds of trust, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all terms about, liens against the property. Then the escrow company is going to prepare the buyer and the seller's estimated closing costs. They give this to them in a sheet. Used to be the HUD-1, but basically it's just a sheet that you get that outlines all of the expenses associated with this transaction. Now, they will typically meet with the buyer and the seller to have these documents signed. Most times they're going to do it separately. There are times when you have everybody together in a room, especially if you got two attorneys involved. So then the buyer's attorney takes care of their documents, seller's attorney takes care of their documents. But there are times that it can also be done separately. Then the new loan docs are typically going to be sent to the lender for approval just to make sure everything's okay, because most lenders also have closing agents who coordinate all of the documents for the lender and make sure everything's okay. Now, escrow companies have been doing this forever, so they know exactly what's required and expected. And with the use of electronics and the internet, etc., these documents go back and forth electronically as opposed to being sent as a package just for the approval's sake. Now, ultimately, lenders going to want the original docs. They're going to want signed docs with what they call wet signatures, so they'll get that as well. Documents also forward to the title company, and then the escrow company typically is going to request the loan to disperse. So once everything has been verified and everything is done, then the escrow company will ask for checks to be cut, and those checks are typically outlined in the HUD-1. So when you're looking at the closing statement, everybody sees what everybody's getting. You see what the seller's getting. You see if there's any credits or anything to the buyer. You see if there are any real estate agents, what they're getting. Many times the attorney fees are there, the title fees are there. If the lender charged some fees, they're there. So all of those fees are going to be in that HUD-1. Once the funds are received, and everything is good, then the documents are going to be recorded so that legally everybody sees this is the day that this property actually changed hands. Then we have the escrow closes, and everybody gets copies of the closing documents. So the seller will have a copy, the buyer, the attorneys, the lender, those that are involved will all have copies of the transaction. Now, is this complicated? Very. Is it something that most of us are going to know exactly how it goes about? No. Do you need to? No. Because as a realtor, your job is not to close the transaction. Your job is to bring together the people who are going to be involved in the transaction and help them to close it. But you help them by just making sure that everybody does their part. Buyer has a certain set of circumstances they have to follow. Lender has a set of circumstances they need to follow. And when everybody comes together and does what they need to do, then the transaction closes. Escrow companies are a vital part of our business, and we have to learn how to work with them.